And now a look at what happened at City Hall tonight. Here's Ellen Bell Chambers. Ellen?
Thanks, Rob. Good evening. Circle Drive Extension opened July 1st last year, but only today did we find out just what the city's going to have to pay for the land it required from the University of Saskatchewan for that roadway. The price is just over $4 million. The price was decided upon by an arbiter because the city and the university could not agree on their own. The city was offering $17,000 an acre. The university wanted twice that, $35,000 an acre. The arbiter settled on a figure just a bit higher than the middle mark, $28,000 an acre. Because arbitration is binding, the city has to pay that $4 million, but in previous budgets, the city only set aside $2.2 million. So it must find that other $2 million. The last bottom line for the Circle Drive project to date was $35.7 million. Now that did include more than $3.5 million for land costs. So it would seem the project will remain below the $40 million mark. However, that's still almost twice the original estimate City Council saw in the fall of 1978. The information about this arbitration award came from a news release from the University of Saskatchewan. When tonight's City Council meeting ended, the councillors had still not discussed the matter, and when the mayor was asked about it, he refused the opportunity to comment. Council immediately went into another closed-door meeting, presumably, we presume at least, to discuss this very issue. The big issue tonight was something that Saskatoon aldermen received a lot of phone calls on today. Irate citizens complaining that the Lathey outdoor swimming pool might be closed. Civic administrators recommended the shutdown because it is the least popular pool and the most expensive to run. But repairs to the water circulation and filtration plant are estimated at $300,000, possibly more. By not opening it this summer, that would mean a savings for the operating budget and a saving of $300,000 from the capital budget. All that means the city's department heads would stand a better chance of meeting this year's severe budgetary guidelines Council has imposed. These are sound economic reasons, but they're countered by the demands of the people. And as Alderman Kay Wagod pointed out, the people includes not only those who live near the pool.
Not only in the Buena Vista, Avalon, Haltane, but also the Nutana area. And I think that we are possibly dealing with a very short-sighted approach to a problem that has been presented by Parks and Recreation Department, but in tremendous isolation of what is happening in that whole area. We have several neighborhoods that I've listed that are all undergoing very positive change in the sense that there are young families moving in who are moving into the area because the neighborhoods have a variety of amenities that people look for, including schools and libraries, fire stations, swimming pools, community centers, shopping on Broadway. And yet, in the face of that, we're suggesting that we close one of the amenities that was part of a plan for a very, very well-planned area. We often hold up that area of Clarence and Taylor as an excellent example of a well-planned community, where we have in a concentrated area a high school, fire station, swimming pool, and a library, and yet we're wanting to close down one of those amenities. And we're doing it because it costs $300,000, and I think that the cost to the community is much greater than $300,000.
Feedback was almost instantaneous the moment the reports came out this morning in the newspapers, and I don't think it ever was the intention of the Parks and Recreation Board that we would suggest today that we would close it, because I think that would be very, very short-sighted. I think to begin with, to suggest that a facility should be closed because we're going to have a new one built and possibly usable in 1986 would be very short-sighted, mainly because we never ever at this point in time approved what will go into those recreational complexes. We don't even know at this particular time whether or not council at some future date will approve an additional indoor swimming pool. We're assuming that that may happen, but that has not been determined. It is being suggested that the attendance is low. I'm not sure that the attendance is low compared to what. It's my understanding from some of the people I've talked to today that the lessons, it's hard to get your children into lessons there. That perhaps some of the other attendance is low on various days. It's also being suggested that the people can use George Ward Pool. Well, what this really means is that you're going to serve a portion of the city that probably represents any place from 70 to 80,000 people with one outdoor pool. And I think if anybody has been to George Ward on a very hot day, they would realize that the suggestion is absurd.
Even if we did approve the indoor swimming pools, that they would not be on stream next year, or possibly even in 1985. I mean, for this summer season, or 1985. And I certainly will support the referral to the Planning and Development Committee. My other concern is, was there at any time through the public health any indication that we should not be running this operation, or that it did not meet standards?
Mr. Chairman, it's not a question of public health. It's simply a question that the facility is just not, it could not be opened this spring unless we spend at least $100,000 and probably $300,000. It's not the public health that is the problem. It's just simply the operational aspects of the pool itself. They tell me that there was water bubbling up through the deck last year, for example. So they know there's a great deal of probably broken mains or supply lines outside the pool basin.
I'm concerned, like I'm not against the fact that we may have to put in a new pool, but I'm concerned about the fact that we are suggesting that we just close it down with no recommendation as to what should happen in the future.
I don't think we had much alternative but to make the recommendation that we did. This really came up during the review by the Board of Administration and myself of the 1984 estimates of the Parks and Recreation Department. It is going to be an expensive facility to operate, and it's going to be a facility that's going to cost us a lot of money as an alternative to expenditures in other areas. And rather than bring the question up, as I said, we have placed it in the budget as an ex-budget item, and I felt it would be more fair to council, probably through the Planning and Development Committee, to review it outside the budget context than to hit you with it as part of the budget review.
Is the recommendation predicated upon the fact that the cost of renovation is going to be so high, or is it predicated on the lack of public use? And I asked those both questions, and I won't speak any further. I want to say that the only time we could justify a move of this kind if both, in my mind, if both conditions did exist. But if only one, especially if the only reason or the major reason would be the high cost of renovation, then I would have a great deal of reservation in supporting the idea.
First of all, we believe, and we won't know until we actually get in there and start doing the repairs, just how extensive the problem is. We believe it's a lot worse than what was originally thought. Secondly, I think the figures that Dr. Smith provided in the last paragraph, second last paragraph of his report, set out on page B4 of the report tonight. The average cost per patron of Lathey Pool is $2.86 in the 3 years prior to including 1983, 22% higher than Mayfair and 113% higher than George Ward. So the cost per patron, this is after revenues and including all of our costs, operating costs only. $1.34 at George Ward, $1.58 at Riversdale, $2.35 at Mayfair, and $2.86 at Lathey. So that, in essence, what we're saying is that it is the most expensive pool to operate based on standard staffing levels at all the pools and in relation to the numbers of people that use it. It has never been a popular pool. If it's going to become that, then no problem. It's not well designed. It's not really, in my opinion, suitable for large numbers of people.
It would seem to me that we would have learned a vicarious lesson from what the school boards are going through right now with respect to public school closings, and not be walking in with jackboots where angels fear to tread, and deciding to close down public facilities without, at the very least, consulting with the community associations in the areas affected by this. And I would hope that the Planning and Development Committee will give some consideration to that if they're bringing back a recommendation, which I hope they won't, to close the pool. I would like to know, though, Mr. Wellman, it seems that what you're concerned about is saving the sum of $300,000. And you seem to be saying if we don't take this very bold action and close this facility, that some other services are going to go begging. What would we be giving up if we were not able to save this $300,000? What are the alternatives?
With the department trying to meet the guidelines that had been laid down for them in 1984, we had to look at existing programs. This is going to be one of the most expensive programs of its kind that we will be asked to operate in 1984, both from the capital standpoint and any capital that is spent out there this year. If it is $300,000 that we're authorized to spend, as we point out in the report, sooner or later the buildings are going to have to be replaced. So by the time we're finished, we'll be looking at $750,000 for a facility that has never paid its way and never will pay its way. It's always been the most expensive of the pools that we've had, to my knowledge. And when we say $2.86, that's what it costs the city for every person that swam there in those last 3 years.
It's not being used. It's got a terrible design. It doesn't attract nearly the kind of participation as any of the others. And I just wonder, you know, the fact is we may be in fact causing an injurious canker in the neighborhood by leaving it there. There's no doubt that the neighborhood is going to be very upset if the pool is closed with no alternative put before them. But I think that before we glibly say, well, we don't want to stand any more telephone calls, so therefore we'll just go along with $300,000, we want to be very careful.
I want to congratulate the administration for having the courage to bring this thing forward. We're always accused in government of never having a sunset look at anything, and that everything that we ever start just goes on and on forever and ever and ever with increasing costs with nobody ever stopping to have a look at it. Frankly, I'll have a hard time spending $300,000 to fix up what, in my mind, is a crummy swimming pool, basically nothing much more than a glorified paddling pool that was never any good when it was first built, and everything that's happened since then has made it worse. I would far sooner spend a half-decent amount of money and replace the stupid thing than spend $300,000 fixing up something that, in my mind, is totally inadequate.
The mayor's comment that a new pool might be what's really required prompted some aldermen to agree that that is what the Planning and Development Committee should study. But that worries some, like Alderman Marshall Hawthorne, who says council should be prepared to bite the bullet now and be prepared to make an unpopular decision. He and some others are worried that the public outcry over the Lathey pool might lever council into the position where it spends even more money on a new pool, something the city would be hard-pressed to afford. So the Planning and Development Committee will review the issue. The Lathey pool, though, could still close. The Saskatoon Zoological Society made a pitch tonight urging council to improve the Forestry Farm Zoo. Society spokesman Dr. Peter Cribb says the fences at the zoo are inadequate, saying they are a hazard to the animals and the spectators. He's also urging council to spend money for a children's petting zoo to allow for close contact between children and young animals. The Society's demands are not excessive. As Cribb said, they are asking for quality, not quantity. And, ironically or coincidentally, it turns out the Planning and Development Committee will bring in an updated report on the forestry farm next week. That's the council show for this evening. I'm Alan Bell Chambers. I say good night, but Rob will be back to wrap it up after you watch this.
Ladies and gentlemen, it's a new Jubilee Ford Great Rebate Sale! Purchase of any new Ford car or truck, such as this 84 Mustang SPO or Bronco 2 truck, you'll receive a $500 rebate. Buy any used car or truck and make no down payment. Only at the new Jubilee Ford Great Rebate Sale. You make your best deal and Jubilee Ford will give you a $500 rebate. It's the most sensational offer ever from Jubilee Ford, on Cumberland and 8th, Saskatoon.
Wake up to CFQC Radio and me, Denny Carr. We have the topics of the day, the latest news, weather, sports, a good time, and you never know who might drop in.
You know, Denny, if I ever get my own village, I want you to be my idiot. You know, Denny Carr has the hottest show in town. Everything is stolen.
Listen to Denny Carr on CFQC.
Boy, that was fun.
What's on the horizon for TV? More than 100 broadcast and cable channels. That's why Zenith invented the Smart Set. The only set smart enough to give you 175 channel capability now. Smart enough to let you access more channels through Zenith's most advanced Space Command remote control. The Smart Set lets you tune in the future without leaving your chair. Advanced System 3, the Smart Set. Exclusively Zenith.
It's hot, and it's at Gulf right now. Hot Spots! The hot new game with over 5 million prizes. You could win a new Ford Thunderbird Turbo. It's hot. Hot Spots! Or 2 tickets to Hawaii aboard CP Air's Orange Bird of Paradise. Or one of millions of 7-Eleven deals featuring Coke, Burns hot dogs, and Old Dutch potato chips. Hot Spots! Get into your participating dealer and play Hot Spots today. You can win every time with Gulf. Hot Spots!
This just in from Tisdale in the last couple of minutes. Jack Scowen of Nipawin will represent the Progressive Conservatives in the Mackenzie riding in the next federal election. He won the nominating convention tonight over 4 other contestants tonight. Jack Scowen representing the Tories in Mackenzie riding for the next federal election. That's it for us tonight. Soap coming up next, followed by Hawaii 5-0 and then the Bionic Woman. We'll see you tomorrow. Good night.
Good night. Good night.
A QC8 News presentation.
In the last episode of Soap, Jessica was kidnapped by some guys who were bad. Though it was Elle that they wanted, he was nowhere to be had. When the family found out, they were worried and sad and must wait for more news, which they hope is not bad. Since Danny was lonely, and Annie was too, they found in each other a friendship that grew. Chester doesn't know of the love that's begun between Annie, his wife, and Danny, his son. And Bert is so high on his fame and career, he would never expect that the end could be near. Confused? You won't be after this episode of Soap.
Imagine being able to make gorgeous knitted items like this beautiful Afghan, these designer handbags, or this magnificent pillow, and without knowing how to knit. Well, if you can turn a crank and sew on a button, you can make any of these items and more with the amazing automatic home knitting machine. Here's how it works. Just thread the machine. This tension bar automatically keeps the stitches perfectly uniform. Now just turn the handle. That's all there is to it. A few turns and you've made a small tube. Close the ends of the tube and you have a granny circle. Rows of granny circles make this winter scarf. Groups make this granny square Afghan. Continue to turn and make a long tube to create these adorable stuffed animals or this beautiful blanket. Yes, there's just no limit to the things you can create. Sweaters, hats, pillows, bedspreads, purses, infant wear, and what a time saver. With the knitting machine, you can actually make this magnificent Afghan in a fraction of the time it would take to knit by hand. By adding a simple crochet or chain stitch, you can make this lacy table covering, and much, much more. The knitting machine comes complete with a skein of yarn, plus step-by-step instructions and patterns to make all the things you see here.